Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. We're going to be doing a video looking at the Survivor Series of 1992. Some classic WWF action. This time period in WWF, there's a lot of championships being traded at this time. They're moving in the generation of going to the new generation. So as a kid watching wrestling at this time, you would think that it's one of the most exciting times that you've ever seen. Normally when, especially the WWF Championship changes hands, it's something memorable. It's a WrestleMania. It's a SummerSlam. It's a big match. They've really been building up to it, but you're looking at 1992. I remember WrestleMania. It's one of my favorite WrestleManias. WrestleMania 8. Coming out of that, you go to Wembley Stadium for SummerSlam 1992. That leads us to Survivor Series 1992. Where we see the leaving of Hulk Hogan, which is supposed to be passing the torch to the Ultimate Warrior to sort of be like the main guy of the company. We see Macho Man Randy Savage, after 4 years, regaining the WWF Championship after he had the angle where he was forced to retire because he lost at WrestleMania 7 to the Ultimate Warrior. He had the 1-900 vote for Savage to be reinstated, where Jack Tunney said that he was able to come back. He wins the championship, and I guess everything is sort of dropped after that, as the guy can wrestle as much as he wants to because he's the champion. He has the belt. He loses to Ric Flair on an episode of Primetime Wrestling. Primetime Wrestling was like the cable show at the time that was on primetime. That was their Monday Night Raw of the 80s and 90s before Raw came along. That was like the A show to watch. We had seen the tag titles change, but never had we ever seen the WWF Championship change. That should have been a huge, bigger deal. More than likely at this time, I don't think we at my dad's house, we had cable. So I probably didn't see it. I probably heard about it. Probably saw a clip of it on Wrestling Challenge. But my memory of this SummerSlam Survivor Series of 1992 is almost nil. There was nothing going on at that time. If I was an Observer fan at the time, stuff would have been blowing up. This, of course, is the same time period of the drug trial, where the country was putting Vince McMahon up on the cross, saying that he was, pushing steroids on these wrestlers, and, the WWF and wrestling as a whole was dirty. They come up with a clause at the end of it, that they're not going to let steroids be there. They're going to test these guys. You can see the wrestlers on the roster getting smaller. As we build up to the Survivor Series, the British Bulldog and the Ultimate Warrior failed drug tests. They come up dirty. At the time, they're trying to get around it. I think they're one of the first guys using HGH, which is something that a lot of football players, baseball players to this day use to sort of get around the drug testing policies. And sometimes you get caught, and most of the times you don't. We have your WWF, sort of like your number one contender, but your main guy of the company, as well as your Intercontinental Champion, which just headlined your second biggest show of the year, fired. Boom. Gotta go. This is a big deal for WWF and Vince McMahon, because they've been pushing a tag match at Survivor Series, the Ultimate Maniacs, the team up of Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage going up against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. This was a bigger deal at the time when they were putting this together, because coming out of SummerSlam, where they had ran Macho Man Randy Savage against the Ultimate Warrior, we had sort of had Ric Flair come down and put himself into that match. I don't know if he's mad because he's not getting a rematch from WrestleMania, if Savage is not giving him a promise that he's going to get a championship shot down the road, much like when Ultimate Warrior turned down Macho Man Randy Savage at the Royal Rumble 1991. Savage comes down, interrupts the match with Slaughter, makes sure that Ultimate Warrior loses the championship. That's what sets up WrestleMania 7. But SummerSlam ends in a countout. We know now that the WWF was pitching the Ultimate Warrior turned heel in that match, and Warrior turned it down, which makes a lot of sense because we had seen babyface versus babyface. We saw it with Hogan and Warrior at WrestleMania, but that SummerSlam match just never felt right. With the Warrior versus Savage for the WWF Championship. Honestly, in my mind as a kid at the time, I thought, Warrior had been gone for a while. Warrior was back. I thought that was where Warrior would win it. But, Ric Flair made sure that neither one of those guys really won that match. And I think he was trying to drive a nail between them. They ended up teaming up. And because of that, now coming into the WWF at the time, we had Razor Ramon. Razor Ramon, we know him now as Scott Hall. New guy in the company. He comes out on the episode of Primetime in the match between Savage and Flair. And is sort of like the reason as the distraction that we have the title change. Ric Flair wins the championship. So at the time they put this match together and they really put it down, we've had a title change set it up. The guy that's going to be in the main event in this tag match is the WWF champion. Before we ever get to the show, Ric Flair drops the belt to Bret Hart in a house show. That was taped. We ended up seeing it on an episode of Primetime down the road. We ended up seeing it on the Coliseum video, Smack 'em Whack 'em, months down the road. But the match is bad. Vince hates it. The guys hate it. Vince has the guys on the same show keep going out there and try to fix it. They can't get the match right. They just fuck it. It is what it is, and they put it out. People have said it's Scott Hall not making the run in at the right time, not making the run in fast enough at the right time. But everything about it, I think Vince just got in a bad mood. He hated that first take, and he wasn't going to like anything that they did after that. So when it really comes down to it, this match that's being put out there as your main match supporting this show, you have your WWF Championship in there, but now, boom, it's pulled out of there, and we're going in a different direction. Warrior ends up getting fired for the HGH. So they have to find a replacement for him. They end up putting Mr. Perfect, who was the manager of Ric Flair at that time, into the match. So we ended up breaking up the Ultimate Maniacs, which is weird because today it seems like they treat the Ultimate Maniacs as this legendary team. They wrestled on Saturday night's main event one time. They probably did in-arena promos one time. They did some green screen stuff building up the show a few times. That's all they do. That's it. We should be getting Mr. Perfect and Macho Man figures, but they didn't have matching attire at the time. They even didn't put Mr. Perfect into this match until the week of the pay-per-view, with days to spare, thinking that they were almost building this up like it was going to be a 2-on-1 match, and Savage wouldn't be able to get anybody in there. I think that what they were hyping up at the time is maybe thinking that Hulk Hogan would come back. He wasn't in WCW yet at this time, but he was out of the company. I bet you there was phone calls made, and probably Hulk looked at the wrestling world and decided it wasn't hot enough. There wasn't a demand on him to come back. It wasn't going to create a huge splash like he did when he ends up coming back at WrestleMania. That ends up, he's hoodwinks Vince into letting him win the championship and then wrestling his last pay-per-view match of the era at King of the Ring the next year. But when it comes down to it, this honestly is a really, really weird show. A match that's not even on the poster. It's not even really publicized out there. Headlines the show. Your new WWF champion wrestles against Shawn Michaels. Really, really good match. Almost a 30-minute affair. Bret gets the win, and it's probably one of the best matches that these guys have. Most people will say that the WrestleMania 1 hour match would be better, but I'm not sitting through that 1 hour match, honestly, in my opinion. I think this one is probably the best one that they have. Last year, at Survivor Series 91, we had our first singles match at the Survivor Series where The Undertaker took the championship off of Hulk Hogan. That was a weird affair for me as a kid because the Survivor Series had never been singles matches. There's only one match to consider a Survivor Series match. It's the Natural Disasters teaming with the Nasty Boys, going up against the Beverly Brothers and Money Inc. It is what it is, but I always love the days of putting 5 guys, 4 guys, didn't matter, as long as you can put them together. And it makes sense that these guys are together. Plus, you got to give them a team name. That's what makes 87, 88, up to 90 really, really good Survivor Series. The matches aren't great, but just the way that they put them together makes them really, really good shows. Big Boss Man fights Nails. Nails, to me, only has 2 matches in the company. This match is the nightstick on a pole. This was big time heat because Nails was supposed to be a former prisoner that returns, goes after the Big Boss Man because Big Boss Man treated him bad when he was in prison. Honestly, you look back at this, Nails probably should have been the babyface. But that's not the way it played out. It's almost when you look at like all the things Hogan did when he was in WWF, he should have been the heel, in my opinion. From here, that SummerSlam, Nails has a match against Virgil, I'm pretty damn sure, which makes no freaking sense. And, then I think he's out of the company because he attacks Vince backstage. We got Tatanka going up against Rick Martel. That's a memorable feud for me, but it's not really a memorable match. Yokozuna defeats Virgil. That's a match I don't think anybody knows anything about. Undertaker beats Kamala in a coffin match. That's probably the one most remembered match from here. Once we actually get down to the match, Savage and Perfect, they defeat Flair and Razor Ramon by disqualification. It's hidden like in the middle of the show. This show is probably something that WWF wants to act like never happened. From here, Perfect and Flair would keep their feud going once we get to the beginning of the next year. Once Monday Night Raw comes out, we actually have Flair wrestle Perfect in a loser leaves town match, where Perfect beats Flair. Flair ends up going back to WCW, where he would have to stay until WCW actually closed, and then come back to the company as a part of the whole. No, he came back the night after the invasion because I think it came out that he had bought what Stephanie and Shane owned of the WWF. So he owned 50% so they could have the money to purchase ECW and WCW. It's funny to think that even after the invasion is over, they're making it look like WCW, ECW shares equal the same amount of WWF shares. It is what it is. But a real dark time for WWF. I honestly don't know why. I don't remember it that well, but it is what it is. Bad time. And just a show that I just don't remember at all.